Hello, Waffle lovers, and welcome to another episode of Whatever Flips Your Waffle here on 365sportscast.com. I'm your host, Mark Domeyer, coming to you as always from the bunker deep in the heart of southern Minnesota. We are on a baseball kick this week, having some fun, wrapping up some local baseball action around the New Richland, Heartland, Ellendale, Geneva area. We're going to talk about some larger scale state baseball action, and of course, the Twins are on the docket this week as well. I'm glad you've decided to tune in and listen to these discussions about Minnesota sports. Welcome to those of you who tune in each and every week, and welcome also to those of you checking things out for the first time. I hope you'll continue to join us each and every week. Sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for another helping of waffles, syrup optional. After this brief commercial break, I'll be back with my interview for the week. This week, we have our first interview returning to us, Matt Johnson of Twins Almanac. We're going to talk about town ball in the state of Minnesota. Stick around. Brian Wayne and Wayne Farms are sponsoring the program again this week. I'd like to thank them, thank all of our farmers, everybody involved in agriculture. This week we want to put a spotlight on our hog farmers. I love bacon, I love ham. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And a lot of hard work and effort put in to those who are raising the pigs and everything else, and putting that good meat on our tables that so many of us enjoy, no matter what time of year we're in. I saw some of our local hog farmers at some ball tournaments this past weekend. It's always good to stop and visit and talk about the future of agriculture in the area. So thank you to our hog farmers. Thank you to Brian Wayne and Wayne Farms. Returning to Whatever Flips Your Waffle this week on 365sportscast.com, Matt Johnson. Matt was my first ever interview on our first show way back in January. He's got a couple big Twitter accounts at Twins Almanac and at Major Minnesota. Last time around we talked about baseball cards and stuff, and we got some other things to talk about. Matt, welcome back to the program.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good times. You know, it's funny because I've had people comment on different shows and stuff, and just this past weekend, I was tournament director for a big baseball tournament, and I had one of the coaches talking to him, and he said, "Hey, you know that guy you interviewed a while back with all the baseball cards?" He said, "My goodness." He goes, "I started following him on Twitter, and holy cow, that's some good stuff." So at least you got one new follower out of appearing on here the previous time.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to run into people and they bring up those kind of things. So
social media in general is kind of cool. Like you bump into people that that you're online friends with. Yeah. Like last night we played in Chaska, and I think one of the cooler accounts out there is Town Ball Tuesdays, and Rhino from Town Ball Tuesdays is on that Chaska team. So it's kind of cool to bump into people that you know from the internet.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. And I'm older than you are, growing up, like I didn't even really know the guys on the other teams we played very well. You didn't interact because that was long distance and it cost money to call people that lived outside your town, but it's a very different world today. We're going to talk some town ball today, and I harken back 2020, kind of when the pandemic hit and people had a lot of time to sit and watch things. Fox Sports North at the time, now Bally Sports North, had a big documentary on town ball. And I don't know if you watched it at all, but I found it fascinating to watch all this insight into what town ball, amateur ball is here in Minnesota.
Yeah, I did watch that. It was incredibly cool. It got pretty dusty in my living room watching some of those games. Like I know, a phrase that came up last time, how can you not be romantic about baseball? And it just applies so often. And when you watch something like that, it's like, how can you not get it? Right. And it's something I wanted to make everyone in my life watch that, just so they kind of got it. That's what, even my in-laws up in Washington. Yep. They're like, "What the heck are you doing with your life?" And I'm like, "Well, just sit down for 8 hours and watch this whole documentary." Yeah.
And that romanticism that you mentioned, that's what I was thinking. Anytime that I bring somebody on the show here and we're talking baseball, I kind of ask that of different people. What is it about baseball? And nobody ever can really put their finger on it. Romanticism is as good a term as any. But
if you sit back and think objectively about the game of baseball, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like, okay, well, why am I into this?
Yeah, right.
I mean, honestly, like tennis or golf or something would probably be a better use of time.
Right, but
easier to explain to someone. But yeah, baseball just sinks its hooks in people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to live without it.
No.
Like, why? What would be the point?
Yeah.
If someone was like, hey, here's this great job in, like, I don't know, New York or something, I'd be like, yeah, but they don't have town ball there.
Yeah. Well, and so you talk about that. Now, a lot of people would argue, and I'm sure you're one of them, that Minnesota town ball is the best in the nation. I mean, is there anybody that compares?
I personally wouldn't be an authority on this, but through Twins Almanac, I've talked to a fair number of kind of national sports people. I think it was Jim Capel specifically was talking about this one time, but I've heard it from a few people who, would be qualified to speak on the national baseball scene. And they'll say it, that there's nothing like this anyplace else in the country. And you got to imagine, like, major metropolitan areas. I'm sure Los Angeles has a great amateur baseball scene. But as far as, like, this network of teams across the majority of the state, I mean, there are kind of, like, some dead zones in Minnesota. But, like, on a state-wide level, people, I've heard it from multiple people who would know what they're talking about. There's nothing else like this in the United States, and it's not even particularly close.
Yeah.
It's crazy what we have here. But even though what we have here is unrivaled anywhere in this great nation, there's still, I feel like, a lot of people who just aren't really that aware of it. Or every year there's, like, potential players who are like, hey, how do I, like it's still kind of mysterious if you're not on the inside.
Yeah.
So we could probably do a better job at, promoting it and like in Nowthen this year, I play on the Nowthen town ball team. We always end up having a few players every year who've been out of ball for a few years and just kind of are just kind of discovering this option.
Yeah, right.
But no, like legitimately, like you talk to national people, town ball that we have in Minnesota, there's nothing else like it in the country. Other big cities have great amateur baseball scenes, but on a statewide level, nothing compares.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think when you talk about coming back to it, I graduated from college. I came to New Richland, got my teaching job, and it never dawned on me to think about this. And I grew up in New Ulm, and I grew up outside of New Ulm, and there's town ball there, certainly, and out in wonderful Essig, Minnesota. But it never dawned on me that I could resume my baseball journey until I started here, and then I played one season of town ball with, at the time, it was the New Richland Black Sox. And we weren't very good, but we had a good time and we had a lot of fun. And they evolved into the New Richland Reds, which have since folded. And now I start to hear rumblings of, hey, how could we get some people back involved and start this again? Because, it like you say, it sinks your hooks into you and you kind of want to keep playing.
Yeah. And so, like, the other thing that people need to realize is every amateur baseball team, particularly town ball, I guess I don't know how, like, other leagues operate, but when we say town ball, there's kind of like most of the teams across the state are under the umbrella of the Minnesota Baseball Association.
Yep.
But as you get closer into the cities, there's the Federal League, which I also play in, and Tick Maple and all this stuff. But every amateur baseball team is kind of a small miracle. Like what it takes to keep one of these teams going. You need a manager who's probably a little nuts that wants to, like, really be more or less dedicated. I mean, it's crazy what it takes to keep these teams going, and there are hundreds of them across the state.
Yeah.
So there's all these people with a screw.
Yeah, I see you're saying we have hundreds of crazy people here in the state.
Yeah. But no, it's really, really cool. And, and once again, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
Yeah.
Like, the people who are keeping this stuff going, it's incredible. Because, like, as you mentioned, teams do fold. There's a lot of, like, Elk River here where I live just up the road in Zermatt. So, they cannot keep a team going.
Right.
Meanwhile, in, like, little Nowthen, where I play, we're terrible. We don't win games, but the team still takes the field, a couple times a week, and not every town can say that.
Right, and you have, the costs are part of it too, and as I worked with this baseball tournament this weekend, and we talked about funding youth baseball, but amateur team, town team, that costs money for baseballs, for umpires, for equipment. There's striping the field. There's all kinds of things involved, and people don't always recognize just how expensive a game baseball can be.
Yeah, Yeah, so umpiring is a pretty good summer job
It-
if you can get it. But yeah, it takes a lot of money. Like every team operates a little differently, and I don't know if people necessarily understand that teams are pretty, kind of like their own entities. They're pretty autonomous. Everybody has to kind of figure out how to make things work for themselves. But yeah, like community support is big. A lot of teams do end up renting fields, but some teams, the way they operate in their community are a little differently, or a little different. But yeah, there's just so many pieces that you have to make happen, and money is big.
Yeah.
I mean, it is expensive. Like, it's not like you don't just show up and like, here's a field, and people have to maintain fields. So
Yes.
depending where you're playing, like maybe maybe the city is maintaining the field. Well, that costs money. That's someone's job.
Right. Right.
Or if the city is not maintaining it, then that's a lot of work for the team. And when you get young guys who come in, who maybe are coming straight out of high school, haven't really like participated, you might need to kind of like introduce them to the concept of like, okay, no, this is our field that we're responsible for taking care of. There's no like custodian who comes out here
Right.
and takes care of everything.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I'm a firm believer you should teach young people how to take care of a ball. Like, the game is done. Let's at least rake up around, fix the mound up, fix around home plate, the bases, if not do a full drag. And because it falls into disrepair so quickly. The cost, I was up in Owatonna sometimes this summer, helping do a little color commentary on their live stream for the Owatonna Aces, their amateur team up there, and talking to their general manager. And he talked about the cost, and they, charge admission, and they do a 50-50 raffle, but he's paying $150 for an umpire because that's what it takes to get an umpire. So
yeah, supply and demand.
Yeah, and you think, and I looked around the stands and I started doing math in my head on the people in the stands, paid for the umpire, and that was about it. That's how many people were maybe at the game, and so you have the other costs.
And not all town ball parks and communities are kind of set up to have much of an audience.
Right.
And we play up in Hinckley. They do a great job of, it's a cool ballpark. They put on a really great show, and they get people from the community to come out. Now then, where we are, like, we're not good, but the ballpark's just kind of like, it's not really a setup. It's not an appeal for spectators.
Yep.
So it kind of varies that way as far as, so up in Hinckley they do that 50-50, but like, a lot of town ball, at least in my area, it's not really a big spectator draw. So it really varies from community to community and from park to park. Yeah.
Well, and I live in an area where there's, again, it's the kind of the ebb and the flow, and one of the Owatonna games I got to watch, they played Waseca, and I don't know if you know of the great Tink Larson from Waseca, Minnesota.
Familiar, not personally.
Yeah, one of the great all-time high school coaches, and he's still managing and playing. I watched 80-year-old Tink
really?
Larson step onto the mound and throw an inning. And I thought,
really, like a legitimate inning, huh?
Yep. Well, I mean, 2/3, and then the 10-run rule went into effect. But
yeah, okay, but it wasn't like, okay, that's pretty cool. Wow.
But that's, you talk about being a little crazy. I can't imagine being 80 years old and stepping on the mound and throwing the ball across the plate. But that's that love, that passion for baseball that some people have. That he's going to.
Did he throw? He threw strikes.
He threw strikes. They hit him.
I wonder if he's in a 30-mile radius of now. Then.
I don't think Waseca fits into that.
I guess not, man. It would be so cool just to have someone who can come out there and not walk. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
there's a few great stories like that of guys who just played, just kept it going, like into the later years. Pete Bright is a name that really stands out. Just pitched. I think he pitched into his 70s, but there's just so many great stories in town ball. And I've never personally been there, but in St. Cloud, there's the Minnesota Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame, and they have a pretty cool website, so you can go through and browse members and get little bits of bios. But there's so many people out there trying to kind of keep these stories in circulation. And Tink Larson, as I said, like I don't know a lot about him. Not someone I've met, but it's just a name. Like, you say that name, and you're just like, yep, that's a name I know that's floating around out there. Yeah. Now it's just a matter of like, kind of making the stories a little more well-known and maybe a little more accessible. But like I said, the Minnesota Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame does a pretty good job as far as like, if there's a name that you're curious about, you can go to their website and at least get a little bio. And
right. Yeah.
There's a few cool books out there. There's a town ball book by Armin Peterson and Tom Tomachek, I think.
Yeah, I think I got that one. Yep.
Yeah, but it's kind of like period specific. It doesn't cover like the whole history of Minnesota amateur baseball. But occasionally, like a name, someone will throw a name out there and be like, "That kind of sounds familiar." So I'll go to the index in the back of the book and then go find the golden nugget that I'm looking for.
Right.
Baseball is so like great in that it really lends itself to just little bits of trivia, little nuggets. Like you don't have to know someone's like whole story. You can just say, "Hey, that one time in 1979 when so and so went 5 for 5 with it's just stuff like that. It's just so cool."
Yeah, it is. We're here. Yeah, we're here with Matt Johnson, returning to the show this week. He hosts at Twins Almanac on Twitter. Good information there. I mean, baseball history, and we're kind of talking town ball today. Talk a little bit about your journey in town ball. Like, you're younger than I am, but you've been playing for some time here, and what brought you into that realm?
Yeah, so I'm 38. I played baseball in high school, didn't play in college, went out for the college team at Gustavus. I was around the team, but I wound up walking away when my arm was just sore all the time. And but I was actually talking about this last night in the parking lot in Chaska, because we're serious about the parking lot social time after games. And we kind of touched on this just earlier in this conversation, that people aren't always totally aware of like what's out there as far as amateur baseball options. So I came back to Gustavus my sophomore year, and coaches were like, "Hey, cool, so where'd you play this summer?" Like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm too old for Legion." Like I just had no concept of it. Like, turns out, there was like a town ball team, and now then I don't know. But I think I was aware that there was a team, but I had zero idea like how to get involved with that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that's on me. But anyway, so then I moved to Seattle for about 10 years. So I'm out there. There's not really, we also touched on earlier that the Minnesota town ball scene is unlike anything else in the country.
Right.
And I can tell you from living out there, like, there's a little bit of amateur baseball like right in the Seattle metropolitan area. But once you get out of Seattle, there's nothing. So there's no like Waseca team, stuff like that.
Right.
And what they do have there in the city is, it's kind of more akin to like a softball league, and that it's not, it's not like each town or community kind of has a team. It's just that there's kind of a league that's centrally organized. And so I did 1 year of that after I've been out there, 9 years, so pretty minimal. Moved back to Minnesota about 6 years ago, but even when I moved back, I had become, through social media, I'd become aware, like, I'd kind of gotten a sense of how big town ball was. But even when I came back, it was a little difficult to figure out, like, hey, where exactly are the teams, and how exactly do I get in touch with teams?
Yeah.
So I wound up, like, messaging Now That on Facebook, and they're the closest team to me, so it happened to work out pretty well. But yeah, when so coming back from Washington back to here and getting involved, it was just kind of like, wow, how have I not been doing this for the last 10 years?
Right.
So I've really only been doing it 5 or 6 years, but like, it just feels like, I don't know, I guess it just kind of feels like part of who I am, even though when I step back and think about it, it hasn't been all that long.
Right.
Although I think baseball people still like, still all through my 20s as I'm living in Seattle, not actively playing, I think I still kind of thought of myself as a baseball player. I go to the gym and do like my pitcher routine and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I brought up Tink Larson, 80 years old, still playing. How long do you think your body can hold out and do this?
My arm, as talking back to my college experience, my arm is just always sore, and it's still the case. I can't, I play back-to-back days. I'm a catcher primarily.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the big issue, is just how long the arm can hold out. But it's never really been there, so I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess I've made it this far with a defective wing. So.
Yeah.
But so I joined this year. I've started playing on a second team in the Federal League, a 35 and over team.
Oh, okay.
Based in Anoka, and those dudes are incredibly fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's just great vibes. Love being around that team. They're really good. When I joined up with Minoka, we play our home games in Anoka. They were previously in Minneapolis, so hence the Minoka name.
Gotcha, yeah.
I kind of thought it was just going to be like casual, like, hey, I'm going to go get some extra at bats over here with these, pudgy old guys, and that is not the case. It is intimidating. They are good and incredibly fun, and yeah, you have opportunities in the state to play pretty much as long as you want. As far as when you get older, I suppose like it's easier if you live close, in the suburbs or in the metro. Like there's not as many, like, because I'm not super familiar with this, but I believe as you get into the cities, I think there's like leagues that are 55 and over.
Yes. Yep. I've heard about those. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So no, I don't see any reason. I mean, look, Jamie, I know like pointing to major league players is kind of like unrealistic, but I'm like, look, if Julio Franco can hit a home run off Randy Johnson at like 49 or however old he was,
yeah.
Like, I don't see any reason why I can't continue to like play at like an Eastern mini level for
right. Yeah.
for as many years.
Yeah, it is.
Or if Jamie Moyer was getting it done at age 50 in the major leagues, like I don't see why I can't play town ball.
There you go. You got the name. I was trying to pick that name out of my memory of that pitcher.
He won a game, I believe, at 50.
I think so. Yeah, that's unbelievable. And I think because I'm 48, I'll be 49 soon, and I can't even umpire anymore. My foot hurts too much, and I just think about, holy cow, these guys, oh my goodness, it is. And again, we bring back that theme of the romanticism of baseball probably keeps people involved in it longer than their body tells them they should be.
It really gives you an appreciation for, like when you're in your 20s, you hear about like people, you kind of hear the talk about pro athletes. Someone will be talking about a running back or something. Oh, he's 30, he's over the hill. And you're like, oh, come on, like that. and it really is, it's different trying to play sports at a competitive level when you're 35 versus like just generally living your life at 35.
Yeah.
Like it's like so you can kind of understand like why it's difficult for professional athletes to stay at that level when they get a little older.
Exactly.
So I did the old Control F trick here in the spreadsheet, and Julio Franco homered off Randy Johnson at age 48.
Okay. Wow. So my age. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Isn't that just nuts to think about? Imagine at your age, you're 48. Imagine standing in the box against Randy Johnson and putting one over the fence like in a major league ballpark. I can hardly get it out of the infield.
Yeah, I can't imagine putting the bat on the ball against Randy Johnson. I was reminded of recently. I was looking up some stuff on TwinsTrivia.com, a great site John Swole runs. And
John's site is one of the better uses of Al Gore's internet.
Yes, yeah, and there was something there, and then also on this day, I look up things about in the past, and the Randy Johnson John Kruk at bat in the All-Star game, where Kruk was diving out of the way, and he's not the most athletic individual ever, but just that high level, and hey, there are baseball leagues like you talk about for 55 and over, and a lot of people play rec league basketball into their 40s, 50s. You don't hear about that with football. There aren't, us older guys out there toting the pigskin. Probably not even flag football, but there is that. And you brought up that like the parking lot social time, which I've seen. I used to umpire in amateur league and stuff, and played that year. And there's that. And even when I walked out of the Owatonna Aces games that I was at, there's the guys. They're sitting there, and you know what? They probably have to go to work the next day too. But it's that time together with people who share that passion, and probably telling stories, because I've rarely been on a baseball field where a story hasn't been told about something that happened in the past.
Yeah, it's a great thing about the game. The pace of the game just kind of lends itself to stories, particularly if you're watching a telecast, which is, getting off topic, but I love that about watching a telecast. The game really lends itself to you get a couple old guys in the booth just kind of telling stories between pitches. But yeah, on the diamond, I mean, same thing. Like on the diamond, it's kind of, you get to visit a little bit. If you play first base, you get to visit a little bit. And there's a real community out there. Not everyone knows everyone. Kind of depends on how long you've been around. But I will admit, like, I'm not the greatest with like remembering who everyone is and all this kind of stuff. But I have a few teammates on both the teams I play for who seem to just know like everyone around the league. Yeah. And show up to a game, and I'm starting to kind of like get a sense of like who some people are, remember some people. But yeah, I think that's like a big appeal for some people, is they kind of have this network of friends like on all these other teams that you go compete against for 9 innings or 7 innings or whatever it is, and maybe you kind of visit a little bit before the game, and then after the game you get together and you kind of, I don't know, you have this surreal sense of community out there in the amateur baseball scene.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the stories, and as I was helping do the broadcast for that game, and Tink was out there, and I told stories because I've known Tink for quite some time, and I told the story of umpiring I think it was a Legion game or something like that down in Richland. He brought his Waseca team down, and in the pregame meeting, he said, "Well, guys, you know what today is? My wedding anniversary." I said, "Tink, I can't believe you got married in the summertime during baseball season." And he said, "Well, that was one thing I had to give in to my wife." But he says, "I always try to schedule a ball game on this day every year." So there's a man who's married to the game as well as to his wonderful wife as well. But we had the chance to tell the story because baseball is that sort of pace game, and it's fantastic.
It takes like wives and families to kind of be supportive of.
It does
for guys to stay in the game too.
It does. I saw one of your tweets you had sent out. I think one of your kids was talking about playing ball someday and the concept of being able to play on the same team. Maybe if you can stick it out that long.
You see some multi-generational combos on diamonds here and there.
Yeah.
I think up in Hinckley maybe or somewhere. But every once in a while you hear about like a battery pitcher catcher, father son.
Yep. I got to see that in Owatonna. They had that. Dad was catching and son was pitching, and so that's a cool experience to be able to have.
That's right. I think that maybe is where what I'm thinking of, because I think you had posted on the interwebs about that.
Okay,
perhaps maybe not. Maybe
I lose track myself. So we got Matt Johnson with us. We're talking town ball, amateur baseball. Matt has Twins Almanac. Encourage you to check that out too. Talk about some of the we talked about the maintenance of fields and everything. What are some of the best ball diamonds that you've played on in your time?
Where I live, playing in the Eastern Mini is not really like, so going back to that town ball documentary series they did, I think there was one episode that was just about like, cathedrals, right?
Yeah.
Like some of the great ballparks. So I think probably more where you are is kind of the heart of where like some of these real great ballparks are. I think when you get like west, southwest part of the state.
Yep.
But as far as in my area, Hinckley is always a treat to go to. And it's not like, it's a really nice playing field. I don't know if it's like, pristine or anything, but it's just like the environment's great. It's kind of an old time ballpark with a nice, grandstand. Also up in that area, just speaking of like, cause there's, I don't know, there's so much that goes into what makes kind of a cool town ball experience.
Mm-hmm.
Quamba up there is just a regular old little field kind of in a swamp. And there's no grandstand or nothing. I mean, it's just like, there's something about it where I go up there and I'm just like, now this is just like an old school ball field. Where we play our home games for Minoka, Castle Field in Minoka, which is the high school field. That's great. It's a nice experience. We went down to Chaska a few weeks ago. I'm going to forget the name of their ballpark down there. Something stadium.
Yeah.
Actually, the coolest thing about that, I walked in and under the, kind of under the grandstand, kind of under the bleachers, they have the restrooms down there. And they have a really cool display set up of Minnesota high school graduates who played in the major leagues.
Yep.
Right up my alley.
Yeah.
That display, that like wall down there is, pretty much could just replace Twins Almanac. I mean, because when I went to, start this Twins Almanac thing, that was pretty much what I wanted to do was just have this just a way to highlight all these guys who grew up in Minnesota. And I think I maybe touched on it on the first podcast, but really my main interest honestly is like the major leaguers who grew up in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But then people just kind of responded more to the Twins trivia stuff. So I pretty much built Twins Almanac just so that I would have an audience so I would have a captive audience to talk to about Minnesotan major leaguers.
Right. Well, and some of them, and of course being from New Ulm, I think of Terry Steinbach, They retire from Major League Baseball, come back and play town ball.
Yes, that is the coolest thing, and that's something I don't know. Someone should take on the project of like really thoroughly chronicling like all the former major leaguers who've played town ball. Like just make some kind of database.
Yeah,
that would be incredibly cool, because that's not. I don't know if like that information is really readily available. Yeah, it'd be kind of neat if like maybe like Minnesota Baseball Association just kind of made some kind of like just rudimentary database where you can just look up like, okay, Terry Steinbach played for this team these years and whatnot. Well, so last night in Chaska, I didn't realize this at the time. I'm not 100% sure of it, but in the team chat afterwards, like, hey guys, he scored however many runs off a former major leaguer. I'm like, what? Turns out Jim Brower, who played in the major leagues for 9 years, was on the mound for Chaska for a chunk of the game last night. I don't know 100% if that. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case, but stuff like that happens.
Yeah,
like these guys. It's incredibly cool.
Yeah, well, and it would promotes the town ball idea. Keeps it alive. I think Terry came back. I think he played for Little Hanska, Minnesota, which is just outside of New Ulm. And I remember my dad telling me, of course you're going to pack the stands there because, here's everybody knows Terry Steinbach and he was a great Major League Baseball player. I think Dana Kicker come back and play too, probably for Fairfax. When he was done in the major leagues, I mean, these names of people who that baseball, again, romanticism, they made millions of dollars, but you're going to come back here and play and still enjoy the experience and keep playing as long as you can. That's good stuff. The playoff structure for town ball, like there's different classes. I know there's a state tournament that runs into August and into September even. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think the champion. So playing in Nowland, we don't really have to concern ourselves too much with the playoff schedule. But I believe the championship is the holiday weekend there at the end of the summer.
Oh, Labor Day. Okay, all right. Yeah. That's and that's a big event. Towns like they compete to be able to host that because you're bringing, of course, a lot of people into town and you could sell a lot of hot dogs and probably a lot of beer too. I would guess.
So if you want to go back to your previous question about nice ballparks, if you want to see some nice ball fields, like look at who's hosted state the previous few years, or probably going back quite a while. But yeah, it's kind of like the Olympics. You win the bid, and then you gotta. You probably win the bid because you have pretty nice facilities to begin with, but then towns really spruce things up to host these things. Yeah,
upgrading everything and really making sure. I just when I talk to people around the area and I work on some ball fields, and I don't ever get them close to what some of these do. But, I hear things like, I get little hints from places, like I put some bricks a little ways down by the pitching rubber. So these pitchers that want to dig this deep hole can only go so far. And I got the idea because I heard about a high school field where they take the bricks out every game and fix it and replace it, and then they put them down. So it's just a couple inches down, but little things like that to make the ball field better. And I think that's awesome, because otherwise fixing a hole on the pitching mound, that's one of the toughest things to do.
Actual bricks?
Yeah, they put bricks down there.
Not like clay bricks or something?
Nope, put some bricks down there. And so, you can only dig so far down there. And I've always wondered why you'd want such a big hole anyway. Now you're pitching kind of up and down. But I think
a lot of times it's just kind of like they're re-evening it, and you just kind of keep going down further and further.
Right.
You might need that trick behind the plate and now things. I end up, as a catcher back there, I end up down pretty deep in the hole.
Yeah, right.
We have some unique challenges in that we don't really have water at the field. Do you use water pretty extensively in your field maintenance? As far as keeping things damp or kind of packed down?
It's funny because somebody asked me that this weekend. We haven't had rain for quite a while, or not enough, and it was getting kind of dusty. But the water main on the diamonds over in Richland is broken and hasn't been fixed for many years. So it's like, well, if I want to take the watering can out there, that's about all I can do. But then we got about 0.2 of an inch on Sunday morning, which settled everything down for the championship rounds really nicely, and that was a good thing. Yeah, there's so many little things, and you pick up tricks of the trade from other people, and you figure some new things out, and it's
I'm
always.
sure there's some good workshops out there, like in the fall or something. Is that a thing? Like, are there like some workshops you can go to where we get experts together and kind of share these tips and tricks, or is that something that maybe like the big town ball, the Minnesota Baseball Association, maybe they should host something like that? 'Cause I've been kind of curious about that, like, bring in some, like, for our field now, that I'm like, hey, can we just like hire Ice Ante to like come in for a day and just like teach us what to do?
Right. I have no idea. Maybe there's the $1 million idea I need so I can retire. Go around and teach about that.
They have like coaches clinics and stuff, right? So we need something on field maintenance.
Yeah, I think that's more that you kind of learn by doing, and you learn by watching and working with other people, and everybody does things a little bit differently, maybe. But
and every field kind of has their unique situations.
Right. Yep. So that, and again, that's what I love about it is I can go sit and work on a ball field, and I probably will in the next day or two, and and it's a great time because, again, I'm surrounded by the things that I love, and that's what we've been talking about here.
And as you're involved and you stay involved with baseball as an adult, we talked about this in the first podcast, it just makes watching the game so interesting. Like, as a player, you're like watching every little detail.
Yep.
I feel like your viewing experience is different. You'd mentioned as an umpire, you kind of watching what they do.
Yeah.
And then even with maybe you go with the target field and you kind of got the binoculars out there watching the ground crew. Like, it just changes the way that you kind of consume baseball when you stay involved with it.
Well, in the championship game in the tournament we hosted, a kid took a he didn't play the ball really effectively, but he took it right in the chin, trying to field the ball, and somebody goes, "Oh, that was a bad hop." And of course, I took a little offense to that because I just got the field ready, and I watched the ball in a different way than a lot of people do too. And I said, "Well, no, if you saw the spin on that ball off the bat, that's what caused it." And, there was no way there was a bad hop there because, by golly, I had raked that part really well. So, and the kid turned out to be okay. But the little spin and that it makes a difference if you have a lip on the infield or the outfield.
I was going to say, that was my first thought. There's a lot of fields get that lip there. So I noticed. I was watching something where they were, and this is probably like a little better field than what most of us are working with, but they actually take like a shop broom and kind of sweep that lip. What do they call it? Like the apron, maybe they call it. But where the transition there from grass to dirt, there's a lot of dirt kind of builds up on that transition. And so after the game, that's part of their routine is they go out there. The first step is just with an actual like shop broom and just kind of sweeping that, just kind of pushing the dirt back onto out of the grass. Right.
Well, it's the same as when you drag a field. You don't want to really. It's when you have the fancy drags where you can kind of lift them up and stuff, it's different. But if you're still one of the fields I work on, we got to go old school. I still have just the drag you put behind the tractor and drag it around. Well, if you start dragging it off the field without lifting that drag up, you're bringing all that red rock and stuff off. So it's tough and it's different, and it different challenges for different fields. So.
Of course, a little gamesmanship can come into play too. You can kind of, if you're a big bunting team, you can kind of build a little ridge there on the third baseline to keep the ball fair.
Of course,
or maybe if your opponent's a big bunter, you might want it to go.
Well, you hear those stories from the major league.
Chicago White Sox in particular, apparently, are legendary for their ground crew really being an integral part of the team.
Right. Yeah. Not working for them so well this year, and that's okay too. So. Let's go back to what we talked about way back in January and baseball cards and stuff like that. Anything special that you've encountered lately? I know a lot of people who listen to this program really enjoyed that conversation and have been asking about that. Like, well, and they follow you now, of course. But anything really cool in the world of baseball cards?
Well, so my relationship with baseball cards is I'm not interested in value whatsoever, and I find it very inconvenient when a card is valuable. I want to be able to buy it for like 12 cents on Sport Lots or like a couple dollars maybe. Over the winter, so I've always been really interested in guys who grew up in Minnesota and played in the majors, and so that's been kind of a focus of my little card collection for a long time. But I actually went through this winter and kind of made a checklist of just like the Topps base cards, just like the basic Topps cards, not all the different inserts and brands and stuff. And sure enough, there has been at least one Minnesota high school grad every year going back to 1951. And some years it was like one, and some years it wasn't even a major leaguer. I think like in 2002 it was draft pick cards of Joe Mauer and Dan Johnson.
Okay.
And so I was really nervous this year, because I hadn't specifically paid attention to this, ever. And then with this past winter, I went through and made a little spreadsheet with like all this stuff. And so now I'm like, okay, who's it going to be in 2022?
Yeah.
And there was nobody in the first series. The Topps releases their their main set, 2 series. There was no one in the first one. The checklist came out for the second series, and I'm like, oh man, I hope I didn't jinx it by like actually making a list. And there's one, and I think I can't remember for sure who it was. I think it was Mike Bauman, and honestly, I'm not even sure if he's in the majors this year or not. But so Minnesota is at least represented for another year.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm trying to collect one. I'm gonna fumble this explanation. I'm trying to get all those cards. Every Minnesotan major leaguer from Topps, like from their base set, card collectors. It's
yep.
We'll kind of understand, but other people's like just the main card, right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're pretty attainable. The 1968 Topps Jerry Koosman rookie card, I will not be purchasing. He of course shares that with Nolan Ryan, and it's one of the more expensive baseball cards on the planet. Now, I have heard people have talked about that back in the day. Sometimes kids would cut those cards in half because it's there's 2 players on the card. It's like a dual card, right?
Right.
And send it to get it autographed or whatever. I think it'd be really cool if one of those popped up on eBay or something. I wonder what a half.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Jerry Koosman half goes for.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Other than that, I think I'm pretty much good on that. I think I put that together. Although one other card that I'm missing is 1961 Topps George Thomas rookie card. George Thomas came out of Bloomington, Golden Gophers legend. I think he was the athletic director at the University of Minnesota for a while. I don't know what it is, why that particular card seems to be spendy, but I think it was kind of a high number. And I think back in the day, maybe you know more about this than I do, but I think back in certain periods, Topps kind of the higher numbered cards in the set, just not as many of them were printed.
Oh, okay.
So they're a little more scarce.
Right. That makes sense. I guess I'm not familiar with it either, but
but like as I said, it's just inconvenient for me when a card's valuable. I don't have any intention of selling any cards. I just want to be able to buy them for cheap.
Right. Well, maybe you can.
So people like when you talk baseball cards, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, that must be worth a little something." I'm like, I hope not.
Yeah. Maybe you'll find that half card and it'll be in your price range, and you can get that. Add it to the collection, and I think that I'm a comic book collector as well, and sometimes I just want the story. I don't care what condition it's in, and like you say, it's kind of inconvenient. I'll take one that the cover is falling off and whatever, just so I can have the story.
So I'm a stickler for I'm cheap. I just don't really take a lot of pleasure in like spending a lot of money on a baseball card. Like I think they should be cheap.
Yeah.
And so like particularly older cards, like maybe it's just because they're in my price range, but I kind of like a well-worn card.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice little patina to it, some nicely rounded corners.
Yeah.
But centering. When you look at a lot of cards, I'm on eBay every day. I have like some saved searches, like for particular cards I'm looking for, like that 1961 George Thomas, for instance.
Yep.
You see a lot of cards pop up where they're not sent. So I believe how cards at least were produced. They print off these giant sheets that have 20 or however many cards on them.
Yep.
And then they're cut out, and more often than not, they're not cut perfectly centered. So that's what I look for is the centering.
Yeah.
I'm a stickler for that centering. I don't want to. They have like the border will be like heavy on one side. It's a little off. They'll be off center.
Yeah, right.
That bugs me. I can't abide that. But other than that, if it's centered, it could have gone through some kid's bicycle spokes.
Yeah,
that might make it look kind of cool.
Yeah, right. Well,
I need the centering though.
Yeah, we'll encourage our listeners, if anybody has any of these that Matt's looking for, you can certainly contact them on Twitter.
Yeah, if anyone has that Jerry Koosman rookie card, you can even keep the Nolan Ryan half.
Yeah, right. Yeah, either contact me or go on Twitter. Go to Twins Almanac. Go to Major Minnesota on Twitter, and you get a hold of Matt. And I'm sure he'd love to talk to you. Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming back and joining us. We love talking baseball, and appreciate having you back on.
Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Yep, sounds good. And now it's time for the state of Minnesota sports. Plenty of things going on. I will make note of this just for your reference. We'll start talking about the Vikings soon, July 30th. They get back together at training camp. So that's coming up right around the corner. Let's talk about the Lynx briefly. As you are listening to this, they would have played another game out of the All-Star break, playing as we record this. The Lynx 2.5 games out of a playoff spot, 13 games left after the All-Star break. Sylvia Fowles had a nice All-Star game, put down a dunk. Everybody was pretty excited about that. One note about the Lynx, as I was reading in the Star Tribune, that they rank first in rebounding in the WNBA. So there's a lot of confidence here. They're talking that they think they can still make a push to make the playoffs and become just like the Chicago Sky last year. They are playing much better lately. After starting 3-13, they won 5 out of 7. But, is the hole too deep that they have dug for themselves? We will have to see. I spoke to Carter Martins not long ago. He was on the program sometime back talking about hockey, and I saw him out at some ball fields, and I asked him what he thought of the Minnesota Wild draft, and he was excited about it. He thought that the Wild got some good young talent to come in. He was all in favor of the Kevin Fiala trade as well, and he thinks that what they got in place of that will serve them well. So he was pretty pumped up, and again, not a great hockey mind here when it comes to that, but he thought that was a pretty good deal for the Wild, something they had to do anyway. And he thinks the young man they're going to get that's at the University of Minnesota right now will be much better than some people think. He's watched him play for the Gophers and thinks that will work out really, really well for the Wild in the long run. The Twins, here we are, honing in on the All-Star break. 2 Minnesota Twins, first-time All-Stars. Luisa Rise, to nobody's surprise, made the All-Star game. Although I saw some, national feedback. Some people are upset because so-and-so didn't make it instead. Listen, Luisa Rise is one of the best hitters in baseball right now, both hitting and on-base percentage, to me, which are really important numbers, especially the on-base percentage, that you are getting on base all the time. That's a pretty big deal. And why wouldn't you want a Rise? Plus, the idea of, not that it's important to win or lose the All-Star game, but you can put a Rise in a lot of different places when you substitute him into the game if you are the American League manager, because you can play a lot of different places. And to me, that's part of his versatility is part of just how important he is, really the MVP of the Minnesota Twins in the first half of the season. Byron Buxton, also a first-time All-Star. Home run numbers up in the 20s. That's a pretty big deal. And he doesn't have the high batting average that you would want, but his OPS is up there, right around the same place as Arise. And, why wouldn't you have Byron Buxton there? Some disgruntlement of people like Joan Duran not making it. But at the same time, he's been struggling a little bit lately too, giving up some hits. People are maybe starting to figure out a few things about how he operates, and maybe he's got to make, just like Tyler Duffy, people are teeing off on him. Perhaps it's time for Duran to look at how he does things and see if he's tipping anything. Devin Smeltzer's been struggling the last couple of starts. Joe Ryan a little bit coming back from his bout with COVID. And these are the types of things that make for a good team. You look at Tyler Duffy, and everybody was ready to get rid of him some time ago. Well, he changed. He went back to using some pitches he hadn't used before. Now he's been much more effective out of the bullpen. You got to look at maybe Emilio Pagan has to do something like that. Maybe Smeltzer has to look at a few things. Maybe Duran, after a couple of stumbles, has to look at a few things. That's how you become a really good team, is you keep people guessing all the time. Not, well, he's always going to do this, this, and this. It's kind of like young pitchers. You'll see them, they'll get up 0-2 in the count, and now they're going to throw their curveball every single time because they're up 0-2, and if they miss, it's no big deal. But that's a trend you don't want to have, because then people can tee off on that, and they're looking for that curveball and can read that really well. So the same thing goes whether you're 12, 13, 14 years old or whether you are a professional baseball player. A lot of things can happen. As you are listening to this, the Twins are finishing a brief 2-game series with the Milwaukee Brewers at home, and then they will start 4 with the Chicago White Sox. And as disappointing as it was to not sweep the White Sox last week, still won 2 out of 3. Stumbled in Texas, losing 2 out of 3. But hopefully at least a split with Milwaukee. They are a good team in the National League Central. And then with 4 games with the White Sox, you have to at least split, but really you want to take 3 out of 4 and go into the All-Star break feeling good about yourself and kind of maintaining the lead. If the Twins go into the All-Star break with a 3-game or better advantage, I'm going to feel pretty good about their chances in the second half. They've played more games than all these other teams. They're going to get some more rest days here in July and down the stretch, and that's only going to help them as well as they try to take control of the American League Central. And I'll be honest, I really think it's going to be, down to the Twins aren't going to clinch anything until maybe a week before the end of the season, if that at the earliest. But we will see next week how they are coming out of that All-Star break. And that is the state of Minnesota sports. And now it's time for This Week in Minnesota Sports History. On July 13th, in 1965, the 36th Major League Baseball All-Star Game was played at Met Stadium in Minnesota. The National League won 6-5, and Juan Marichal was the MVP, pitcher for the Giants. A real Hall of Fame lineup when you look back at who all played in the 65 All-Star Game. And John Swoll, who had been on the program earlier, talked about that time in Minneapolis and just how many awesome people were there, and he was at that game as well. On July 13th in 1993, the All-Star Game was in Baltimore, and the American League won 9-3. Kirby Puckett of the Twins was named MVP. In 2014, on July 13th, the Home Run Derby was held at Target Field, with Yoenis Cespedes winning with 28 total home runs. I was there at that game, thanks to Jim Lutkins, who had given me his ticket. Went with his son Eli, who is the editor and publisher of the Star Eagle, which advertises on the program here. It was a fantastic night, rain delay, but then the rainbow came out, and there's some really iconic pictures you can see of the rainbow over Target Field. It was just a fun experience, something I'll probably never get a chance to do again, so I'm always grateful to Jim for giving me that opportunity. In 2019, on July 13th, the Twins beat Cleveland 6-2, and Max Kepler became the first player in history to homer in 5 consecutive at-bats against one pitcher, Trevor Bauer. Bauer couldn't get out of the American League fast enough when his contract came up. And of course, he's in a little bit of trouble these days as well. On July 14th in 1991, the Twins retired Tony Oliva's number 6 before beating Boston 5-3, and of course, Tony O will go into the Hall of Fame this month. 2008, on July 14th, Justin Morneau won the Home Run Derby in New York, beating Josh Hamilton in the finals 5-3. Hamilton had more total home runs, but the way they worked it then, he had a final showdown, and Morneau won 5-3. On July 15th, in 1989, Jeff Reardon saved his 250th career game in a 3-2 win over Boston. On July 15th in 2014, the American League won the All-Star Game at Target Field. 5-3, Mike Trout was MVP. On July 16th in 1969, Rod Carew stole home for the 7th time that season in a 9-8 win over the White Sox, tying the record for steals of home. I think my understanding is he made another attempt later in the season. It sure looked like he was safe, but was called out. No replay back then, of course. On July 16th in 1985, the National League won the All-Star Game at the Metrodome 6-1. Lamar Hoyt of the Padres, as a pitcher, was the MVP. So all 3 All-Star Games that we have hosted, one at each of our stadiums, all within this week in history. In 2000, on July 16th, the Twins traded Butch Husky and Todd Walker to Colorado for first baseman Todd Sears. Looking back, not the most productive trade, really, for either team. In 2003, on July 16th, on the other hand, the Twins traded Bobby Kilty to the Blue Jays for Shannon Stewart and Dave Gassner. Stewart was the spark plug that brought the Twins back and made a playoff run that year thanks in large part to him becoming their leadoff hitter. Kilty was a good fourth outfielder back in the day, but Stewart really made a difference for the Twins. In 2011, on July 16th, the Twins retired Burt Blyleven's number 28 before the Twins beat the Royals 4-3. On July 17th in 1990, the Twins became the first team to ever turn two triple plays in the same game, 5-4-3, third to second to first, against the Red Sox, but the Twins still lost 1-0. On July 18th, in 1962, Bob Allison and Harmon Killebrew each hit grand slams in the first inning, and the Twins scored 11 total in the first, ultimately beating Cleveland 14-3. On July 18th in 2016, Terry Ryan was fired as general manager. The Twins were 33-58 at the time. Ryan, of course, had been GM, stepped back, came back to do the job again, and then was shown the door, opening it, ultimately for Derek Falvey and company to take over. On July 18th in 2020, that date marked the 100th game that had been canceled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. On July 19th in 1975, Thurman Munson of the Yankees had a first-inning RBI hit nullified because he had too much pine tar in his bat. And then the Twins would go on to win 2-1. No George Brett incident there, but too much pine tar. On July 19th in 1982, Tom Bernansky had the only inside-the-park grand slam for the Twins at the Metrodome in a 6-4 win over Milwaukee. In 1987, on July 19th, the Twins retired Rod Carew's number 29 before a 7-6 win over Toronto. So it's not only an all-star week, but a retirement of numbers week for the Twins. And on July 19th in 2004, Terry Mulholland picked up the win in a 3-1 Twins win in Detroit. He became the third Major League Baseball pitcher to beat all 30 teams. Well, that'll do it for another helping of waffles here at 365sportscast.com. I'm glad you tuned in. Hope you'll continue to join us each and every Wednesday right here at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. If you're busy on a Wednesday night, you can always catch each episode at the same time every evening throughout the week, 8 Eastern, 7 Central at 365sportscast.com. Shows also archived to YouTube and Spotify. You can catch any of the past episodes on those channels. Remember, if you have thoughts about the program, if you think you might be a good interview, email me, waffleflipper22@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter at Mr. D 1973. Next week, we'll be right back here looking at the world of Minnesota sports. What will the Twins look like coming out of the All-Star break? What is in store for them? Will the Lynx continue to trend upward? And the Vikings are right around the corner. Come on back and find out more. I'll have another special guest to delve into all of that. Thanks again for joining me. This is Mark Domeyer signing off with Syrup.